Trevor Crow from relatively new president of ARAFMI Illawarra, and I work, my day job is over at Wollongong University, teaching in psychology, school of psychology, a postgraduate program, and part of my involvement with ARAFMI has been around being able to set up student placement psychology intern placements and look at a number of purposes really. One being that we've got places where intern psychologists can learn more about working with carers, mental illness generally, but more specifically within families and friends of people who are supporting people with mental illness. And mental illness comes with a whole bunch of other things, drug abuse, a whole range of other things too. So it does give people the capacity to learn from the inside and walk alongside carers on their journey, and learn from them and from people who have been around in their own recovery and relational empowerment kind of journeys as part of coming to terms with an illness being part of somebody's family, but also what happens next. And the other part of it is then that ARAFMI being a big part of the way ARAFMI works is relies on volunteers, and students kind of fall into that place as well. We're trying to increase the professional profile of ARAFMI, and having people with professional training helps with that. So it fits nicely in with some of the development agendas that I personally have at the university around developing carer programs in ways that are more than the traditional strategies to kind of get people a range of coping skills and being able to be resilient through the processes of being in a relationship with someone who has a mental illness, but to extend that so that we're looking at the journey of that individual journeys from all family members and friends, associates of people.
And Trevor, with the postgraduate program, have you had quite a few students come in and support ARAFMI through their placements?
It's a relatively new venture, so we've had a couple so far, and that'll extend into coming years. I anticipate we'll have at least 2 here each year. And then once they've graduated, they complete their internships and become fully fledged psychologists. We're also then interested in attracting other disciplines, so we might be able to get some OTs and social workers involved as well. But it does provide counselling resources for families and carers. So, and as I was saying, we kind of want to build beyond where traditional carer support programs have stopped, and kind of look at the overall journey into their own recovery journey, because you can't be in a relationship with someone with a mental illness without that impacting on your own life and your own journey as a family member. And not only the mental health needs of carers themselves, because there's a significant proportion of carers have quite serious depression, anxiety, and a whole range of other issues. But also trying to disentangle how lives get entangled in somebody else's illness. So this part of the journey is to disentangle that and to take your own life back, and to live a meaningful life yourself, and start to move in directions that are valuable. And that actually supports the journey of the person with the mental illness as well.
And just on that point, I believe there is probably more than one social group run by mental health carers, ARAFMI Illawarra, and so does that provide a balance, do you think, to some of the carers? Obviously being a carer sometimes can be quite challenging.
Yes.
And you see those groups as very useful?
Well, there's a range of them, so there can be anything from just a place to go and to be around other people who've going through similar experiences, and that's invaluable. You can't teach people that, because it's lived experience, and I think that's really important. But alongside that, there are more specific groups around. For example, carers of people with a loved one with a personality disorder, PTSD, or groups that are more specifically focusing on interpersonal problems and kind of learning how to kind of work with those challenges more specifically. And one that we're developing now or refining now, and it'll be an ongoing process forever probably as new research comes out and new experiences kind of from carers themselves feed back into the evolution of some of these programs, which is looking at that personal recovery journey of carers.
Yeah, and through your association with mental health carers, RAFMI Illawarra, do you get a sense that many of the carers associated or members of RAFMI are isolated apart from the family member or person or friend they're caring for? Do you get a sense that they rely on a RAFMI for those social groups because they themselves are isolated?
Yeah, that's a typical experience. I mean, it's apart from the grief and loss that goes along with having the trauma show up in a family of mental illness, and like I said before, the other complications that often go along with that. Stigma is a huge issue, and people tend to isolate because of the stigma of having mental illness in the family. People generally, it's changing slowly, but generally the public don't understand mental illness and the impact that has on families. So one of the ways people cope, or try to cope, is to shut it down and shut themselves away at home, and it becomes quite isolating, which adds to the problem, adds to their own level of distress and often depression, as I was mentioning before. And somewhere like RAFMI is really critical for multiple purposes, not only that being able to reconnect socially in an environment where they're going to be accepted and supported and understood, but also there's the capacity to have some professional support as well.
Yeah.
So it meets both of those.
Yeah. And Trevor, I believe fairly recently you were elected, or I guess that's the right word, as the president of the board of mental health carers, RAFMI Illawarra. Yeah. And are you pleased with the board that you're working with, and is there a fairly good balance?
No, I think that there is the board's really a really good mix. We've got a range of professionals from different disciplines, legal, accounting, psychology, working with the government departments, some experience around that as well, and that married with carers themselves and the lived experience make up the board consists of that. So I think that's really essential. Any board that's representing and trying to drive and direct a carer service needs to have carers driving it. And I think we need to develop that even further and have more consultation with carers and development of programs that we offer as well.
And looking forward, I believe recently the board made a submission around pre-crisis intervention in one of Wollongong's major accident emergency centres. You probably can't say too much about it, but if you could tell us something about the concept of that.
Yeah, well, it's kind of, as I was hinting at before, I think it's what we're trying to do is have something that's kind of supporting people's journeys across the whole spectrum of where people may be developmentally on their recovery, and that will start with pre-crisis work and crisis, where people are in crisis, so showing up. By the time people show up to emergency departments, they're already in crisis. Yes. So we need to have resources to be able to respond to that in those really critical periods and be able for people to access some of the support from the RAFMI. And that can include things like accurate information about mental illness that often people don't get. What are the impacts of mental illness on the family? Medication issues, so the things that you would think people would automatically get when they're engaging with mental health services or